I was the one holding his shoes. Not the nurses, not his friends from the game, not his mother who kept saying she was on her way, but never arrived. Me, bare feet swinging off the side of the emergency bed. My husband cradled his right arm against his chest, face pinched in a performance of pain I would have thought was real once. He looked small in the hospital gown, ribs sharper than I remembered. Hair mussed because he'd insisted on yanking the 4 tape off twice already. "It's broken," he groaned, loud enough for the whole curtained bay to hear. I heard the crack. Didn't I, June? 3 years ago I would have rushed to reassure him. Tonight, I watched him instead. The tendon in his neck flexed exactly the way it did when he wanted an audience. "You fell," I said, keeping my voice neutral. That's all I heard. He gave me a look that said I was missing my cue. It was almost midnight. The stale air in the emergency department smelled like alcohol wipes and burned coffee. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor kept chiming in a steady, patient protest that no one silenced. My clipboard of forms rested on my lap, the pen hovering over the line labeled Spouse Significant Other. I had already filled in all of his details from memory. Marital status, married, insurance, mine, emergency contact, me. "June," he said, jaw tight. "Tell them about the stairs." The nurse at the bedside, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a neat bun under her cap, didn't even glance at me. She was wrapping a blood pressure cuff around his good arm. Fingers efficient, movements practiced. "What stairs?" she asked, focusing on the numbers. "The stairs at home," my husband said. "She left one of those stupid throw rugs on the landing. I tripped, went straight down, landed right on it." He nodded toward his broken arm like a magician presenting the finale of a trick. The nurse's eyes flicked to me, quick and assessing, not accusing. "Not yet." I set the pen down. "We don't have rugs on the stairs," I said quietly. His head snapped toward me. "What?" "You asked me to throw them out last year," I reminded him. "You said they were a hazard." "So I did." A muscle in his cheek jumped. "Look," he said, letting out a strained laugh. She's in shock. She doesn't remember. It was fast. My foot hit something and..." The nurse pressed a button on the monitor. The blood pressure cuff tightened around his arm, then hissed as it deflated. "Blood pressure's fine," she said. "Doctor will be in after X-ray. Any allergies?" "Penicillin," he said, then added quickly, "Oh, and I get nauseous with morphine. And sometimes with codeine. And honestly, most pain meds, really. So maybe no meds? Just something mild until we figure out what we're dealing with." It slid past most people, that kind of sentence. To me, it sounded like a man who wanted to remember every detail of an injury. "Okay," the nurse said slowly. She glanced at the chart, then back at me. "You're his wife?" "Yes. June," my husband supplied. "She's June. She's a saint, honestly. Drove me here. She's a great driver. Except for the rugs." He tried to chuckle and wince at the same time. The nurse didn't smile. "Well, June," she said, "do you have any questions before we send him to imaging?" I had 1,000. Why did his shirt smell faintly like perfume that wasn't mine? Why had there been a 40-minute gap between his last text, "Game's going late, save me dinner," and the call from an unknown number saying, "Ma'am, your husband's had an accident"? Why had his eyes gone flat when he realized it was my insurance card that would be paying for this? But I didn't ask any of those. I asked the one that made me feel less crazy. "How long have you worked here?" I said. The question surprised her. It surprised me too. She blinked, then the corner of her mouth softened. "Long enough to know the vending machines lie," she said. "Short enough to still care." My husband huffed. "Can we just get this over with?" I'm in agony here. She met his eyes for the first time since she'd walked in. That's what we're here for, she said. Order just came through. Imaging will take you in a few minutes. She adjusted the blanket at his shoulder, professional. Distant, then turned away, flipping through the chart. That was when I saw her do it. It was small, almost careless. She tore a sheet from the back of the clipboard, wrote something on it with her own pen, 2 quick lines, and folded it twice. Her body angled just enough between my husband and me that he couldn't see. She slipped the folded paper under the corner of my own stack of forms. The movement so smooth it might as well have been a habit. Then she looked up at me. Not at the way my hands rested too tightly in my lap. Not at the tired ache in my arms from the long day. At me. There was something in her eyes. Not pity. Not the distant politeness I'd seen in 100 other professionals' gazes when they registered a woman trying very hard to stay calm. Something sharper. Someone will be by to take him to X-ray, she said. You can wait here or in the family lounge if you need a break, June. She used my name like a gentle tap on my shoulder. I'm fine, I said. Her gaze flicked to the papers in my hands, then back to my face. Read everything they give you, she said quietly. All the way through. It matters more than people think. Then she was gone. My husband groaned again, louder, as if testing how far he could push the sound before someone came rushing back. No one did. The curtains swayed behind the nurse's retreating figure and settled. Can you believe this? He said. 3 hours for one broken bone. And it's all because you insisted on those cheap decorations. I told you homey is just another word for hazard. We don't have rugs on the stairs, I said again. He rolled his eyes. You're really going to stick to that? I didn't answer, because my fingers had found the folded edge of the paper under the stack of forms. It felt like a small stone under the skin of my life, tiny but impossible to ignore. I waited until a transport orderly appeared to wheel him to imaging. I watched him disappear down the hall, complaining about the bump in every tile. Only when the bed and its noise were gone did I let myself breathe. The emergency bay felt suddenly bigger without him in it, the air less crowded. I unfolded the note. The handwriting was neat, hurried but clear. Check the camera. That was the first line. The second line was a time and a place. 8:43 p.m. Parking lot entrance, north wing. My chest tightened. I read it again, slower, as if the meaning might change. Check the camera. 8:43 p.m. parking lot entrance, north wing. The time meant nothing to anyone else. To me, it was a missing block of color in the long, careful spreadsheet of our marriage. I am an accountant by trade. For 10 years, I've balanced other people as numbers by day, and our household as numbers by night. I know where every dollar goes, every recurring charge, every subscription he swore he cancelled but didn't. I don't remember song lyrics or faces from high school, but I remember timestamps. At 7:55 p.m., he texted me a photo from the sports bar where his weekly pool league met. His beer, his teammates, the green felt of the table. Same as always. At 8:02 p.m., I texted back a picture of the lasagna I'd kept warm in the oven. A small, silly ritual of ours. No response. At 8:39 p.m., an unknown number had called. Ma'am, your husband's had an accident, a woman's voice had said. He fell. We're heading to County General now. Can you meet us there? 20 minutes, that was all. 20 minutes in which his life, according to him, had gone from a game of pool to a dramatic tumble down our very own staircase. Except now, a nurse who had never met me before had written down a different story. Check the camera. 8:43 p.m. parking lot entrance, north wing. The north wing wasn't anywhere near our house. It was attached to the private orthopedics clinic across town. The place you went when you planned your injuries. I folded the note again, slower this time, aligning the creases like it was a contract. A different version of me would have gone straight to the nurse's station, waving the paper in the air, demanding answers. The version of me who still believed that making the most noise got you the most truth. But I'd spent the last few years learning something else. Noise didn't scare men like my husband. Silence did. I slipped the note into my wallet, between my ID and my emergency credit card, and went to find the family lounge. The lounge was a room that tried very hard to be soft. Soft chairs, soft lighting, a soft loop of some home renovation show playing on mute in the corner. A teenage boy slept in one armchair, hoodie pulled over his face. A woman in scrubs scrolled her phone with one hand, nursing a coffee with the other. I chose a chair against the wall, where I could see the door. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from my husband, sent from his hospital bracelet scanned number. "You okay?" I stared at the screen. "Am I?" I typed back slowly. "Filling out forms. They're taking you to X-ray." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Don't forget to tell them about the stairs," he wrote. "It's important they note it was at home." Of course it was. Home meant my insurance. My liability. My fault if he decided to say it loudly enough. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. "Okay," I wrote. Not yes, not done. Just okay. I set the phone face down on my knee. My reflection stared back at me from the black screen, distorted and bluish. Dark hair scraped into a low bun. No makeup. The blouse I'd been wearing since 8 that morning creased along my sides. The thin chain of my wedding ring threader glinting at my throat because my fingers had started to itch whenever the band sat where it was meant to. I tried to remember the last time someone had looked at me the way the nurse had. Like they saw not just the mess, but the mind. I came up blank. Rough night? The voice came from the coffee machine. The nurse from my husband's bay was standing there, stirring powdered creamer into a paper cup. I straightened instinctively, like a child caught reading answers off the back of the book. She walked over and dropped into the chair opposite mine without asking, as if she knew I wouldn't say no. "Lena," she said, holding out a hand. "June." We shook. She didn't comment on the way my fingers tensed. "How bad is it?" I asked. "His arm." "Fracture, most likely," she said. "We'll know more after the X-ray. But not the worst I've seen tonight." I nodded. "He says he fell down the stairs." Her eyes held mine. "Is that what happened?" I opened my mouth to say yes. Closed it. "I wasn't there," I said instead. "That wasn't my question." A bitter little laugh escaped me. "You don't mince words. Too old for it," she said. "Too tired. Pain gives analysis, gives decision, gives action." That had always been my loop. I just hadn't applied it to him yet. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you." By the time my husband came back from imaging, grumbling about how long it had taken, and how cold the X-ray room was, I had a plan. Not a full one. Not yet. Just the first cell in a new spreadsheet. He didn't notice the way I watched him. He never had. "They say it's a fracture," he announced as if he'd won something. "Non-displaced, whatever that means. They'll cast it and I'll be out of work for weeks. Months, maybe." He sounded almost pleased. "You work at a desk," I said. "You can type with your left hand. You've done it before. Not with the kind of pain I'm in," he said. "And my boss will understand, especially when he hears it was a home accident." There it was again. Home. He waited for me to argue. I didn't. Instead, I smoothed the edge of the blanket over his legs and said, "They'll want you to sign discharge papers. Let me read them first." He shrugged. "Fine. You love paperwork." Love was a strong word. Paperwork had never gaslit me. An hour later, Lena reappeared with a resident doctor, a stack of forms and a plastic bag containing his cut-up shirt and personal belongings. The doctor talked in quick, clipped sentences about follow-up appointments and avoiding lifting. My husband nodded solemnly, interjecting details about his devastating fall that grew more dramatic with each retelling. "Can I see the incident report?" I asked when the doctor finished. He blinked. "The what?" "The report from the clinic," I said, voice steady. "The one they sent over about how he was injured on their property." The doctor glanced at Lena. Lena didn't look at me. "Ah, that's more on the administrative side," he said. "But you can request copies of everything through patient relations." "I already did," I said, because while my husband had been in X-ray, I made a call from the family lounge to the number on the clinic's website. I'd used the phrases Lena had given me, incident documentation, for my records. Considering speaking to an attorney, the woman on the line, brisk, efficient, had promised to email me forms to authorize release. When she'd asked where to send them, I'd given her my personal address, not the shared one. "Good," the doctor said, shifting his weight. "In the meantime, we just need a couple of signatures and you'll be all set." He held out a clipboard to my husband. I stepped between them. "Can I read them first?" I asked. "Of course," my husband sighed. "June, it's just standard stuff." "Then it won't take long," I said. The doctor handed me the clipboard. 3 forms. Consent for treatment. Acknowledgement of discharge instructions. Verification of information. At the bottom of the last one, a line read, "Mechanism of injury. Patient reports fall down home staircase due to rug on landing." He had already told the story twice. This would make it 3. My pulse thudded in my ears. "This isn't accurate," I said. The doctor frowned. "Isn't that what happened?" "No," I said. "It's what he says happened." "But your records should match the clinic's, shouldn't they? For billing? Liability?" Lena's face stayed neutral, but I saw the smallest flicker in her eyes. The doctor shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we're just documenting the history provided by the patient." "Then add that," I interrupted, surprising even myself. "Write that it's his report, not a verified fact." My husband stared at me like I'd slapped him. "June," he hissed. "What are you doing?" I met his gaze, honest, steady. She sipped her coffee, face unreadable. "The security cameras outside the north wing cover the parking lot and the entrance," she said after a moment, like she was talking about the weather. "They keep the footage for 90 days. Longer if it's tied to an incident report." "Why are you telling me that?" "Because when your husband came in, he was already splintered. He said the paramedics did it at your house." "They did." I heard my own voice shake. "They came to the house and—" "Except the report they sent over from the private clinic says different," she continued, still calm. "Says he showed up there at 8:40 p.m. with an injury sustained from a fall in their parking lot. They recommended imaging. He declined. Said he'd rather come here." My mouth went dry. "I thought maybe he'd changed his mind," I said weakly. "Maybe," she allowed. "But he also insisted you'd want it billed as a home accident. That's specific." My stomach dropped. "Look," Lena said, leaning forward slightly, her voice low. "I'm not a detective, I'm a nurse. My job is to treat what comes through the door. But I've been doing this a long time, and I've learned to listen when stories don't match. Tonight, they don't. What are you suggesting?" She didn't flinch at the edge of my voice. "I'm suggesting that if someone asked me to sign my name under a version of events I wasn't sure about, I'd want all the information first," she said. "And cameras are good at telling the parts people leave out." I thought of all the things cameras had never seen. The way his words could cut cleaner than any knife. The apologetic flowers that always came a week later, when the bruise had already turned yellow. The way he'd learned to raise his voice only when no one could hear. Aren't there privacy laws? I asked. There are also injury reports, liability forms, and insurance claims, she said, all of which rely on accurate information. The clinic has to log an incident on their property. They have cameras. If your husband asked for those records, he'd get them. If his lawyer did, they'd get them faster. My heart stumbled over that word. Lawyer. I had never said divorce out loud, not even to myself in the dark, but lawyer was just adjacent enough that my mind filled in the gap. Why would a lawyer be involved? I asked anyway, because saying it might make it less real. Lena's gaze softened. June, she said quietly, when a patient is very, very particular about how an accident is described, it's often because someone told them to be. I pressed my fingertips into my knees until I could feel the shape of my own bones. Is he in trouble? I asked. For coming here instead of staying there? Not yet, she said. Right now it's just a broken bone. Could have happened anywhere. But if he's planning to use this later to make a claim, to assign blame, then yes. Where, when, and how it happened will matter a lot. My throat felt tight, like there was a hand wrapped around it. What do I do? I whispered. She didn't tell me to leave him. She didn't tell me to stay. She just nodded toward my wallet, where the note burned like a secret I hadn't agreed to keep. You're smart, she said. I can tell. Get the footage. Get the reports. Keep copies somewhere safe. And don't sign anything you're not sure about tonight. I swallowed. I don't know how to get footage, I said. Start with patient relations, she said. Tell them you want a copy of all incident documentation involving your husband's visit to the North Wing tonight. Use that phrase. Incident documentation. If they give you trouble, mention you reconsidering speaking to an attorney and want to have all your records in order. I flinched around the word. She saw. You don't have to decide anything tonight, she added softly. Just give your future self good paperwork to work with. A strangled sound rose in my chest. I bit it back. Why help me? I asked. She stared into her coffee as if something important floated there. Because once, she said, someone slipped me a note like that. I ignored it. I spent the next 5 years wishing I hadn't. We sat in silence for a moment. The home renovation show flickered in the corner. The teenage boy snored quietly. I thought of my spreadsheet brain, the way it catalogued every purchase, every recurring charge, every time he'd borrowed money from my savings for something temporary that became permanent. Making sure no one can say I lied under oath later, I said. Something ugly flashed across his face. He opened his mouth, then closed it, remembering the doctor, the nurse, the thin curtain between us and the rest of the department. The doctor cleared his throat. We can add a note that the mechanism of injury is based on patient's account, he muttered. That's fine. He scribbled a line, initialed it, and handed me the pen. Sign here to acknowledge you've reviewed it, he said. I signed. My name looked different than it had a decade ago. Sharper, less looping. Like it belonged to someone who'd learned the cost of erasing herself. When my husband tried to take the clipboard, I held onto it a moment longer. Don't sign anything you're not sure about, I said softly. He smirked. I'm sure, he said. I fell down the stairs at home. You saw me. But we both knew I hadn't. He signed anyway. They casted his arm. They gave him a sling and a sheaf of aftercare instructions he didn't read. I walked beside the wheelchair as an orderly rolled him toward the exit, his bare toes peeking out from under the hospital gown. In the harsh fluorescence of the lobby, he looked less like a wounded hero and more like what he was. A 36-year-old man who had never learned to own his own mess. Tomorrow, he said as we stepped into the cool night air. You'll call HR and tell them what happened. Make sure you emphasize how hard this will make it for me to work. They might let me go on disability. Disability, I repeated. For a fracture, I added in my head. And you'll call the insurance company, he continued. Tell them it was at home, on the stairs. They're more likely to pay out if it's a home safety issue. His words snapped into place with the neatness of numbers on a page. Home accident, disability, insurance, payout. You've thought a lot about this, I said. He grinned lopsidedly. Well, I'm stuck with this thing for a while. He held up his cast like a trophy. May as well get something out of it. We reached the car. I opened the passenger door for him. He paused, leaning one hip against the frame. And hey, he added, voice dropping, this might actually be good for us. Good, I echoed. If I'm home more, he said, we can, focus on us, work on things. You can cook more, help me shower, be there. Like a real wife. It was casual, the way he said it. Like a real wife. As if 12 years of paying bills, balancing budgets, staying late at work to cover his impulsive switches between careers hadn't counted. I smiled. It felt like placing a final number in a column I'd already decided to close. We'll see, I said. By the time we got home, it was after 2 a.m. The house was dark, except for the little lamp I'd left on for myself by habit. I helped him out of his shoes, arranged pillows to support his arm, set a glass of water on the bedside table. He watched me with that same self-satisfied little curve to his mouth, like a king surveying a loyal subject. You're good at this, he murmured as I tucked the blanket around him. Taking care of things. I don't know what I'd do without you. That used to sound like love. Now it sounded like a threat. You don't have to find out, I said. He yawned. You'll call the insurance first thing. I'll handle it, I said. He nodded, satisfied. Within minutes, he was snoring. I stood there a moment longer, watching his chest rise and fall. Then I slipped my wallet from my bag, took out the folded note, and smoothed it open on the dresser. Check the camera. 8:43 p.m. Parking lot entrance, north wing. He claimed he'd been at the sports bar until the moment he came home. He claimed he'd tripped on a rug that didn't exist. He claimed he'd fallen down our stairs. The camera would have its own story. I decided I wanted to hear it. The next morning, while he dozed on painkillers and called out weekly for more pillows every so often, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and a fresh spreadsheet. I named the file something boring. Household_repairs_2024. If he ever glanced over my shoulder, his eyes would slide right off it. In the first column, I entered dates. In the second, events. In the third, documents. 8/14. E-visit, County General, discharge papers, clinic incident report, requested. Next line. 8/14. North Wing Orthopedics, security footage, parking lot entrance, requested. I sent the email to the clinic that I drafted in my head all night. Dear Patient Relations, as discussed by phone, I am writing to formally request copies of all incident documentation related to my husband, Eric Dalton, who presented to your North Wing clinic on 8/14 at approximately 8:40 p.m. This includes, but is not limited to, any written reports, intake notes, and security footage capturing the parking lot entrance and lobby around that time. I understand there may be procedures for release of such information. Please let me know what forms you require. Sincerely, June Dalton. I read it twice. I did not mention lawyers. Not yet. I hit send. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow I have a special story for you. The clinic responded faster than I expected. By mid-afternoon, I had a polite email in my inbox with a PDF of a release form attached. "We'd be happy to provide the requested documentation, Mrs. Dalton, once we receive the completed and signed form. Please note that security footage is retained for a limited time. We encourage you to return the form at your earliest convenience." I printed the form while the shower ran upstairs. Eric insisted he could manage alone. "I'm not helpless, June." But 10 minutes later, I heard the familiar call. "Babe, can you come here a sec?" I found him in the bathroom, arm in a plastic-wrapped cast, wrestling with the faucet. "It's slippery," he complained. "Can you turn it off? And maybe help me with this stupid wrap?" I did. I kept my eyes on the tape, not on the way water beaded on his collarbone. "We should file a complaint," he grumbled as I dried his good hand for him. "About the stairs. Houses should warn you if they're dangerous. Maybe we can sue the builder or something." "Our house is 10 years old," I said. "We've lived here for 5. All I'm saying is, if something's unsafe, someone should be held responsible." "I agree," I said. He smiled, oblivious to the way the words settled around us. When he was settled back in bed, propped up with his tablet and a bowl of cereal, I went back downstairs and filled out the clinic's form. The signature line was for the patient. I stared at it. I could forge it. I knew his handwriting as well as my own. I'd signed his name on 100 birthday cards, a dozen missed delivery notes. But I wanted everything about this to be clean. No questions. No cracks. So I climbed the stairs again, pen and paper in hand. "Hey," I said lightly, holding up the form. "The clinic emailed this. They need your permission to send over their reports. For our records." He frowned. "Why?" "Probably liability," I said. "In case we decide to complain about their parking lot." His gaze sharpened. "Complain," he repeated. "They did let you walk out with a broken arm," I said. "If you'd fallen again on the way here, that would have been bad for them." He considered this, ego soothed by the idea that someone else might be at fault. "Good point," he said. "Sure. Give me." He scrawled his name without reading the rest. I took the paper back, scanning the signature. Eric L. Dalton. Neat as always. I walked back downstairs, scanned the form, and sent it. This time I did mention lawyers, in the subject line. Request for incident documentation. Potential legal review. The footage arrived 2 days later. A secure link. A password. A warning not to share without consent. Eric was in the living room, loudly losing a video game with his casted arm propped on a cushion. I locked myself in the small office we once planned to turn into a nursery and opened the link. The video was grainy, black and white, time-stamped in the corner. 8 hours 42 minutes and 10 seconds p.m. The camera angle showed the north wing parking lot entrance from above. A row of cars. The sliding glass doors. A dark patch of asphalt where the overhead light flickered. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, at 8 hours 42 minutes and 37 seconds, a familiar car pulled into view. Our car. I leaned forward until my nose nearly touched the screen. The car stopped in a space near the entrance. The driver's door opened. Eric climbed out. He moved easily. No limp, no hesitation. He rounded the car and opened the passenger door. A woman stepped out. She was tall, in a fitted dress and heels too high for a casual night at the sports bar. Her hair was pulled into a sleek ponytail that swung when she laughed. Because she was laughing. Eric said something. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the cadence, and she doubled over, hand on his chest. He caught her elbow. His fingers lingered. They stood there for a moment, bodies angled toward each other, like there was a bubble of world only they could see. 8 hours 42 minutes and 58 seconds. He leaned in. She tilted her face up. They kissed. It wasn't a drunk bar peck. It was familiar, practiced. Like this wasn't the first time. I sat very still. My hands felt cold, but the rest of me felt oddly calm. Pain gives analysis, gives decision, gives action. For once, the pain hadn't caught me off guard. The part of me that had already suspected infidelity filed this under confirmation. They pulled apart. She smacked his chest lightly, laughing again, then turned toward the entrance. Her heel caught on the uneven lip of the asphalt. She stumbled. Eric reached for her. In the process, his foot snagged on the same lip. He went down. Hard. His arm twisted under him at an angle that made my own bones ache in sympathy. He didn't fall far. He didn't tumble down anything. He just misjudged his own center of gravity while trying to impress a woman who wasn't his wife. The woman dropped to her knees beside him, hands fluttering. He sat up slowly, cradling his arm. The clinic doors slid open. 2 staff members rushed out, helped him up, guided him inside. At no point did the camera show a staircase. At no point did it show our house. At no point did it show a rug. I watched it twice. I downloaded a copy. I saved it in 3 different places. Then I opened a new tab and pulled up our bank's website. Because if he was willing to lie this easily about where and how he'd been hurt, I needed to know what else he'd been comfortable rearranging without my consent. What I found didn't shock me, exactly. Shock requires surprise. This felt more like finally locating the leak that had been sinking us slowly for years. 3 months ago, he'd taken out a personal loan. In his name, the payments were coming from our joint account. The purpose was listed as home improvements. We had not improved anything. 6 weeks ago, he de-transferred a chunk of our savings to a separate checking account I didn't recognize. The recipient name was a business I'd never heard of. Last week, he'd made a series of small purchases at a boutique hotel downtown. I checked the dates. They lined up with his late nights at pool. I scrolled further. 3 payments to a new lawyer's office over the past month. Retainer. Consultation. Drafting. The descriptions were vague, but they didn't have to be detailed. The numbers told their own story. My husband had been preparing for a different kind of break long before his arm. He'd been positioning himself as the injured party. The one hurt at home. The one entitled to compensation. The one whose wife hadn't been careful enough. The camera had disrupted his narrative. Now I had to decide what to do with that disruption. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We had a conversation that night. Not the explosion he might have expected if he'd known what I'd seen. A quiet thing at the kitchen table, while he complained about his sling and asked what was for dinner. Pasta, I said, setting a plate in front of him. And we need to talk about the loan. He froze, fork halfway to his mouth. What loan? The one you took out 3 months ago, I said. In your name. Paid from our account. Color drained from his face, then flushed back in an angry rush. You went through my emails. Bank statements, I said. You know, I reconcile every account. It's literally my job. He set the fork down hard enough to make the plate clatter. That money is for us, he said. For the house. For when we... He gestured vaguely toward the future. House improvements, I said. That's what the loan description says. What did you improve, Eric? He looked away. Don't do this, he muttered. Not when I'm like this. He lifted his cast as a shield. Like what? I asked softly. Injured or caught? His eyes snapped back to mine. You're being dramatic, he said. I fell. I broke my arm. I'm in pain. And you're interrogating me like I committed a crime. I thought of the video. The way his body had curved protectively around a woman who wasn't me. The way he'd walked into our house an hour later, cradling his arm, and blaming a rug I'd never owned. I watched the footage from the clinic, I said quietly. His face went still. What footage? The security camera, I said. North wing. Parking lot entrance. 8:43 p.m. He swallowed. You can't just... I can, I said. They sent it. You signed the release. You tricked me, he said. No, I said. I asked for information. You gave permission. The camera did the rest. He pushed his chair back, the legs scraping against the floor. You have no right to spy on me, he snapped. It is not spying if you lie about your location and then bill the consequences to our shared life, I said. It's due diligence. He laughed, harsh and ugly. Listen to you, he said. Due diligence. You think you're some kind of detective because you watched a blurry video. I think I'm a woman who's done letting a man rewrite reality, I said. Silence fell between us. You don't get it, he said finally, voice low. You never have. I've been unhappy for a long time, June. You're cold. Obsessed with spreadsheets and receipts and keeping everything so tight. I needed a break. I needed to feel wanted. You could have told me that before you hired Alawia, I said. His eyes widened. You went through my messages, he accused. I went through our bank account, I corrected. 3 payments to an attorney. Same time as the hotel charges. Same time as the withdrawals. Let me guess. You were going to file. Claim I neglected you. Say I didn't keep the house safe. Use the fall to paint me as careless and unstable. He didn't confirm it. He didn't have to. The silence did it for him. You're making this into something it's not, he said weakly. Then tell me what it is, I said. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you were building a case. Emotional neglect. Unsafe home. Financial dependence. Poor Eric. Trapped with a controlling wife who won't even put rugs where he wants them. He flinched. When were you going to tell me? I asked. Before or after the accident? He opened his mouth. Closed it. I waited. Pain gives analysis, gives decision, gives action. I realized, suddenly, that I wasn't waiting for his answer to decide anything. I was waiting to see if he'd confirm the version of himself I already knew. I don't owe you a timeline, he said finally. There it was. I see, I said. I stood. He watched me, wariness creeping into his gaze. What are you doing? He asked. Tidying, I said. It was the truth. I collected my laptop, my wallet, the folder of printed documents I'd been assembling quietly over the past 2 days. I moved through the house calmly, pulling my grandmother's jewelry box from the back of the closet, the flash drive from behind the jar of rice in the pantry, the small fireproof envelope of my personal documents from its hiding place under the floorboard in the office. He followed me as far as the bedroom door, cradling his cast. June, he said. You're overreacting. We can work through this. Couples do all the time. You can't just... I already spoke to Alawia, I said, turning to face him. His mouth fell open. Today? Last month, I said. When I saw the first retainer payment to yours. His voice cracked. I didn't confront you, I continued. I gathered information. I moved some of my assets into a separate account. My 401k. The emergency fund my grandmother left me. I changed the password on my personal savings. I let you keep thinking I was in the dark, because I wanted to see how far you'd go. His shoulders slumped. June, he said, don't do this. I made a mistake. A mistake is leaving dishes in the sink, I said. You built a narrative where I was the villain. You injured yourself trying to impress someone else, and decided to make my home, my body, and my bank account part of your alibi. He stepped toward me. I stepped back. Don't, I said. He stopped. You love me, he said helplessly. I thought of late nights at the kitchen table, eyes burning as I calculated how to stretch my salary to cover his latest career whim. I thought of how small I had made myself, how many times I'd laughed off his barbed comments because I'd been afraid of being alone. I thought of a nurse with tired eyes who hadn't owed me anything and chose to risk a note anyway. I loved the version of you who was honest with me, I said. He doesn't live here anymore. He shook his head. You can't prove anything, he said. It'll be your word against mine. You didn't even see the fall. I almost smiled. The camera did, I said. His face drained of color again. You wouldn't, he whispered. I already downloaded it, I said. Twice. And I sent a copy to my lawyer this afternoon, along with the bank statements, the loan documents, and a summary of tonight's conversation. He stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Who are you? He asked. I felt something in my chest loosen. A quiet strategist who funded everything, I said softly. Finally done being invisible. I picked up my bag. Where are you going? To my sister's, I said. Just for a few days. To think, you don't have a sister, he said automatically. I paused. He was right. My sister had died when I was 18. He'd been at the funeral. He knew. I know, I said. That's what you tell people when you don't want them to know where you really are, isn't it? He stared. I rented a small place near the office, I said quietly. Month to month. Started the lease last week. Figured I'd rather pay for my own peace than another one of your business ventures. You're leaving me, he said. I'm leaving the version of this life where my silence funds your lies, I said. Whether you choose to come clean in court is up to you. But the paperwork doesn't lie, Eric. Not anymore. He grabbed at the doorframe with his good hand, looking suddenly every bit as breakable as his X-ray had shown. What am I supposed to tell people? He asked weakly. The truth, I said. For once, I stepped out into the hallway. June, he called. I turned. Please, he said. We can fix this. I thought of the nurse in the emergency bay. The way she'd said, you don't have to decide anything tonight. Just give your future self good paperwork to work with. I already did, I said. I closed the door behind me. The click sounded like a period at the end of a very long sentence. Outside, the night air felt different on my skin. Lighter. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. The last message from my lawyer sat at the top. Subject line clear. Re. Next steps. I typed reply. Let's proceed. Then I tucked my phone into my bag, squared my shoulders, and walked toward the small rented future I'd built quietly, line by line, while he'd been busy rehearsing his fall. For the first time in years, the numbers added up in my favor. And this time, I was the only one writing the story. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.